The great meeting hall on Nexus Prime buzzed with noise. Thousands of alien beings filled the massive space, their voices mixing together in a chaos of sounds. Some clicked, others hummed, and a few made noises that humans would find impossible to describe. Ambassador Zethkari stood at the center podium, his tall purple frame towering over the speaking platform. His forearms moved in smooth gestures as he addressed the crowd. Behind him, a huge screen showed images of human soldiers with their basic weapons and simple armor. Fellow members of the Galactic Consortium, Zethkari's voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly into hundreds of languages. Today we discuss Resolution 2847X, the complete ban on human military forces in our operations. Laughter erupted from different sections of the hall. The Krikstar delegation made sharp clicking sounds that served as their version of chuckling. Their insect-like bodies shook with amusement. Near them, the rock-like Morden rumbled deeply, the sound vibrating through the floor. "Look at them," Zethkari continued, pointing at the screen. "These mammals still use metal bullets. They throw explosive devices by hand. They fight with knives when their simple guns run out of power." More laughter filled the air. A Lumini delegate, appearing as a shifting ball of light, pulsed brighter with what others recognized as humor. They discovered space travel only 60 of their years ago, the energy being communicated through thought waves. "My people have been exploring the stars for 10,000 years. The human delegation area sat empty. Earth had not sent representatives to this particular vote. They knew what was coming and saw no point in watching the spectacle. But Admiral Sarah Chen watched from Earth, her tired eyes focused on the screen in her office. "These humans," Zethkari went on, "fight like their ancestors from thousands of years ago. They charge at enemies with loud noises. They use brute force instead of elegant solutions. While we have developed weapons that can bend reality itself, they still prefer to hit things with bigger hammers." The Veltar delegation nodded their approval. Their leader, High Commander Zelmoth, stood up to speak. His species had perfected the art of existing in multiple dimensions at once, making them nearly impossible to hit in battle. "The humans won their last war by dropping nuclear bombs," Zelmoth said with disgust in his voice. "Nuclear bombs. Like savages burning down forests to catch small animals. My people can phase shift entire planets out of normal space-time. Why would we need such primitive allies?" A wave of agreement swept through the chamber. The assembled aliens represented the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Each species had evolved far beyond the need for simple violence. They fought with technology that could rewrite the laws of physics, weapons that existed in several dimensions, and tactics that required computers to calculate properly. Dr. Kethran of the Wise Ones stood next. His species had evolved beyond physical bodies millions of years ago, existing as pure thought energy. "I have studied human military history," he announced. "They have been fighting constant wars for their entire existence, but their methods never change. They still believe that throwing more soldiers and bigger explosions at a problem will solve it." "Exactly," Zethkari agreed. "While we seek harmony through superior technology, they solve disputes through violence. While we end conflicts with minimal casualties using precision strikes, they carpet bomb entire cities. They are not worthy to fight alongside civilized beings." Admiral Chen leaned back in her chair, watching the debate. Her gray hair was pulled back in a simple military style. Her uniform was plain, compared to the elaborate outfits worn by other species officials. But her eyes held the hardness of someone who had seen real combat. "Admiral," her aide Captain Rodriguez entered the office. "The vote is about to begin." "I know," Chen replied quietly. "Let them have their fun." Back in the chamber, delegate after delegate stood to voice their support for the ban. Thermwantu. Lord spoke of their ability to exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. The Hive Collective bragged about their shared consciousness, allowing perfect battlefield coordination. The crystal beings demonstrated how they could convert matter into energy with their thoughts alone. "What could humans possibly offer?" asked Speaker Morthak of the Northern Alliance. "Their fastest ships are slower than our cargo vessels. Their strongest weapons are weaker than our construction tools. Their soldiers require food, water, and air, basic needs that many of us abandoned long ago." The laughter grew louder. Some delegates began making jokes about human limitations. They joked about how humans needed sleep, how they got injured easily, how they panicked under pressure. "They even fight among themselves constantly," added Councillor Vexitra of the Peacekeepers. "How can we trust beings who cannot even maintain harmony within their own species? They have wars over resources that we can create from empty space." Ambassador, Zethkari called for the final vote. The massive display board lit up as thousands of delegates cast their decisions. The numbers climbed steadily, 847 votes in favor of banning humans from military operations. Only 12 votes against. The few voices of dissent came from species that had actually worked with humans before. The Traders Guild, who had seen human merchant marines fight off pirates, voted against the ban. The Outer Rim colonies, who had witnessed human rescue operations, also disagreed, but their voices were lost in the overwhelming majority. Resolution 2847-X passes, Zethkari announced with satisfaction. Human military forces are hereby excluded from all Galactic Consortium operations. We will rely on proven, advanced civilizations for our defense needs. The chamber erupted in celebration. Delegates congratulated each other on making what they saw as an obvious decision. Why include primitive beings when they had access to godlike technology and evolved intelligence? On Earth, Admiral Chen turned off the transmission. Captain Rodriguez waited for orders, expecting anger or frustration from his commander. Instead, Chen simply nodded slowly. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Rodriguez asked. "Continue our military preparations," Chen replied calmly. "Focus on expanding our manufacturing capabilities. I want our shipyards running at full capacity within 6 months. But Admiral, we've been banned from consortium operations. Why continue military expansion?" Chen stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of the new orbital shipyards where human engineers worked around the clock building warships. The designs were simple compared to alien technology, but they were reliable and could be built quickly. "Captain," she said without turning around, "every species in that chamber today has forgotten something important about warfare. They've become so focused on being clever and elegant that they've forgotten the most basic truth of combat." "Which is, Admiral?" Chen finally turned to face her aide. Her expression was serious but not worried. If anything, she looked almost amused. "Sometimes you don't need the fanciest weapon or the most advanced technology," she said. "Sometimes you just need someone willing to keep fighting when everyone else gives up. Someone too stupid to know when they're beaten." She gestured toward the shipyards. "Let them have their phase shift drives and quantum weapons. Let them celebrate their advanced civilization. But keep building our ships, Captain. Keep training our soldiers. Because sooner or later, the galaxy is going to face something that can't be solved with elegant solutions." "You think there will be a war, Admiral?" Chen smiled grimly. "There's always a war, Captain. And when it comes, they'll remember why humans have been fighting for millions of years. They'll remember why we never learned to give up." Outside, the shipyards continued their work, building humanity's simple but deadly fleet while the rest of the galaxy celebrated their sophisticated superiority. The emergency alarm screamed through the halls of Nexus Prime. Red lights flashed in every corridor as officials ran to their positions. The peaceful headquarters of the Galactic Consortium had not heard these warning sounds in over 300 years. Ambassador Zethkari rushed into the main command center, his purple skin now pale with fear. Around him, dozens of military leaders from different species shouted orders and studied the massive screens, showing star maps of the galaxy. "Report," Zethkari demanded. General Krixtal, his insect body clicking nervously, turned to face him. "Long-range sensors detected them 6 hours ago. The Devourers have returned." A chill ran through everyone in the room. The Devourers were legends, stories told to frighten young beings across the galaxy. 3,000 years ago, they had swept through this region of space, consuming entire worlds before vanishing into the dark void between galaxies. "How many ships?" Zethkari asked, though he dreaded the answer. "We cannot count them accurately," replied Dr. Synthara, the consortium's chief scientist. Her crystal body flickered with nervous energy. "Our best estimate is over 50,000 vessels, but they appear to be growing in number as they consume matter from destroyed worlds." The main screen showed grainy images from the Outer Rim territories. Massive organic ships like giant insects made of metal and flesh swarmed around a planet. As they watched, the world seemed to dissolve, its matter being absorbed into the alien fleet. "What about the outer colonies?" Zethkari asked. 7 systems have already fallen, General Krixtal reported grimly. "The Devourers consume everything: planets, moons, space stations, even the local stars. They convert all matter into more ships and soldiers." High Commander Zelmoth materialized in the room, his form shifting between dimensions. His usual arrogance was replaced by genuine concern. "My phase shift scouts report that the Devourers have evolved since their last appearance. They adapt to our weapons within hours of first contact." Adapt how? Zethkari demanded. Whatever we use against them, they learn to counter, Zelmuth explained. Energy weapons become useless after the first battle. They develop immunity. Quantum attacks are analyzed and turned back against us. Even reality warping weapons lose effectiveness after initial use. Despite this alarming news, many leaders in the room still felt confident. The Galactic Consortium represented thousands of advanced civilizations. They had weapons that could destroy stars, ships that existed in multiple dimensions, and soldiers who had evolved beyond physical limitations. Then we use different weapons for each battle, suggested Admiral Veltran, of the Cosmic Fleet. We have millions of different technologies. Surely they cannot adapt to everything. Agreed, Zethkari nodded. Prepare the combined fleets. Every species will contribute their most advanced warships. The Devourers may have surprised the outer colonies, but they face the full might of galactic civilization now. The assembly that followed was impressive. From across the galaxy, the most powerful military forces converged at the staging area near the Kepler system. The Veltar brought their reality phase cruisers that could attack from 17 dimensions simultaneously. The Morden deployed their planet-killer dreadnoughts with gravitational weapons capable of creating black holes. The Krigstar contributed thousands of quantum-linked fighters that shared a collective consciousness, making them impossible to surprise or outmaneuver. The Lumini sent their energy form squadrons that could pass through solid matter at will. Even the peaceful Wise Ones provided their thought projection warships that could attack enemies' minds directly. This is the greatest military force ever assembled, declared Fleet Admiral Nexron as he reviewed the battle formations. Over 10,000 advanced warships filled space around the staging area. Each vessel represented centuries of technological development and evolutionary advancement. The first engagement took place at Kepler 442, where a smaller Devourer force was consuming the local asteroid belt. The consortium forces attacked with overwhelming superiority, using their most advanced weapons and tactics. The results seemed to prove their confidence was justified. Phase shift weapons tore through Devourer bioships before they could adapt. Quantum disruptors destroyed entire enemy formations. Gravitational weapons crushed dozens of organic vessels into tiny balls of compressed matter. Victory is ours, Admiral Veltran announced as the last Devourer ship exploded. They may be numerous, but they cannot match our technological superiority. Similar battles followed across the Outer Rim. Each time, consortium forces achieved victory through their advanced weapons and superior tactics. The Devourers seemed primitive in comparison, using simple organic technology and basic attack patterns. But as the battles continued, troubling patterns began to emerge. Each victory became harder to achieve. Weapons that had been devastatingly effective in the first battle worked less well in the second. By the third engagement, some systems became completely useless. The phase shift weapons are no longer working, reported Captain Zethkor after the battle at Ross 128. The Devourers seem to have learned to track our ships across dimensional boundaries. Impossible, High Commander Zelmoth replied. It took my people 2 million years to develop that technology. They cannot master it in a few weeks. But the evidence was undeniable. With each battle, the Devourers adapted more quickly. Quantum weapons that had been effective for 3 engagements now failed after 1. Reality warping attacks were analyzed, copied, and turned back against their users within hours. Worse yet, the Devourer fleet was growing. Every battle, even the ones the consortium won, seemed to make the enemy stronger. They absorbed the wreckage of destroyed ships, learned from captured technology, and incorporated new capabilities into their ever-expanding swarm. We need new approaches, Dr. Senthara suggested during an emergency strategy meeting. Perhaps, if we combine multiple weapon types in ways they have not seen before. Agreed. Zethkari nodded. We still have thousands of technologies they have never encountered. Surely our combined knowledge can overcome their adaptation abilities, but each new strategy worked for shorter periods. The Devourers' learning speed increased exponentially. Weapons that should have been completely alien to them were countered within minutes of first use. Their biomechanical ships evolved new, defenses faster than the consortium could develop new attacks. The retreat from the Outer Rim began quietly. Military leaders did not call it a retreat, of course. They used terms like strategic repositioning and tactical consolidation. But the reality was clear. The Devourers were pushing the combined might of galactic civilization back toward the core worlds. How is this possible? Zethkari demanded during another emergency meeting. We represent the pinnacle of technological advancement. We have evolved beyond the primitive limitations that once constrained organic life. That may be precisely the problem, suggested Dr. Morthel, a young scientist from the research collective. Our weapons are based on advanced principles: quantum mechanics, dimensional manipulation, reality alteration. These complex systems can be analyzed, understood, and countered. What are you suggesting? The Devourers are essentially a learning machine, Dr. Morthel explained. They excel at understanding and adapting to sophisticated technology. But what if we used something too simple for them to analyze? Several delegates laughed. Simple weapons? Admiral Veltron scoffed. We abandoned such primitive approaches millions of years ago. Are you suggesting we fight with rocks and sticks? The humans still use kinetic weapons, Dr. Morthel continued quietly. Simple metal projectiles propelled by chemical reactions. Perhaps. Absolutely not, Zethkari interrupted firmly. We will not abandon millions of years of technological progress to fight like savages. We are civilized beings, not primitive barbarians. The meeting ended with plans to develop even more advanced weapons. The greatest minds in the galaxy worked frantically to create new technologies that the Devourers could not adapt to. Each effort failed faster than the last. Meanwhile, the Devourer advance continued. They consumed 47 worlds in 6 months, their fleet growing larger and more sophisticated with each victory. The consortium's advanced weapons became useless almost immediately upon deployment. In desperation, some junior officials quietly suggested contacting Earth. These suggestions were quickly dismissed by senior leadership. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations would not ask for help from primitive humans who still fought with metal bullets and explosive chemicals. But as the Devourers approached the core systems, and as their adaptation abilities made every advanced weapon obsolete within hours of first use, a few beings began to wonder if perhaps there was wisdom in simplicity that their sophisticated minds had forgotten. The final major engagement was yet to come, and with it, the humbling realization that sometimes the most advanced solution was not always the best solution. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in the consortium's history. Delegates who had once carried themselves with proud confidence now huddled in nervous groups, their voices low and worried. The great chamber that had once echoed with laughter at human primitiveness now filled with the sound of fear. Ambassador Zethkari stood at the central podium, but his usual commanding presence had crumbled. His forearms trembled slightly as he gestured to the tactical display showing the Devourer advance. Red markers indicated consumed worlds, 47 systems completely devoured, their matter converted into more enemy ships. The situation has become critical, Zethkari announced, his voice lacking its former authority. Our best estimates show the main Devourer fleet will reach the Centaurus Gate within 2 weeks. That is our final line of defense before they reach the core worlds. General Krixtal clicked his mandibles nervously as he provided the military update. We have committed every available warship to the Centaurus defense line. Over 8,000 vessels representing every military innovation our civilizations have developed. What about our new weapon systems? Asked Counselor Vextra. Surely the temporal disruptors or the void generators will prove effective. Dr. Synthara's crystal body dimmed with pessimism. Each new weapon we develop becomes useless faster than the last. The temporal disruptors worked for exactly 17 minutes during the battle at Wolf 359. The void generators were countered before we could deploy them in their second engagement. How is that possible? Demanded High Commander Zelmoth. The void generators required our finest minds 300 years to perfect. They manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. That is precisely why they fail, Dr. Synthara explained. The Devourers seem to analyze the theoretical principles behind our weapons. The more sophisticated the technology, the faster they understand and counter it. It is as if they are reading the mathematical foundations of reality and rewriting them to suit their needs. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. These beings represented civilizations that had evolved beyond physical limitations, that had learned to manipulate time and space itself. They had considered themselves gods compared to primitive species like humans. Yet they were being systematically defeated by an enemy that treated their greatest achievements as merely interesting puzzles to solve. Perhaps we should consider evacuating the core worlds, suggested Speaker Morthak quietly. My people have deep space colonies in the Andromeda Galaxy. Others could flee to distant regions where the Devourers might not follow. Run away? Zethkari's voice cracked with strain. Abandon our homeworlds to save ourselves? We are supposed to be the guardians of galactic civilization. What civilization will remain if we are all consumed? Morthak replied. Better to preserve something than lose everything. The debate that followed was desperate and chaotic. Some species advocated immediate evacuation. Others insisted they could develop new weapons that the Devourers could not counter. A few suggested attempting diplomacy, though no one had ever succeeded in communicating with the hive-minded enemy. Admiral Veltran stood to address the assembly. His usually pristine uniform was wrinkled, his eyes red from lack of sleep. I have fought in 17 major conflicts across 300 years of service. I have commanded fleets that could destroy entire star systems. But I have never faced an enemy like this. The Devourers do not just adapt to our weapons, he continued. They seem to anticipate them. Our quantum-entangled battle computers predict their movements, so they develop technology that interferes with quantum entanglement. Our phase-shift ships attack from multiple dimensions, so they learn to exist in all dimensions simultaneously. It is as if they are several steps ahead of us at all times, added General Krikstal. Every tactical innovation, every technological breakthrough, they have already prepared countermeasures before we even deploy them. Dr. Morthal, the young scientist who had previously suggested simpler approaches, stood nervously to speak. Honored delegates, I must again raise a possibility that many of you will find distasteful. Speak, Zethkari commanded wearily. Our weapons fail because they are too sophisticated. The Devourers excel at analyzing and countering advanced technology. But what if we use something so primitive that their analytical capabilities become a disadvantage rather than an asset? You speak of the humans again, High Commander Zelmoth said with disgust. This is not the time for jokes about primitive weapons. I am not joking, Dr. Morthal replied firmly. Consider their approach to warfare. They use simple kinetic weapons, metal projectiles accelerated by chemical explosives. There is no quantum mechanics to analyze, no dimensional manipulation to counter. Just basic physics, mass, velocity, and momentum. Barbaric, muttered Counselor Vextra. Perhaps, Dr. Morthal agreed. But consider this. The Devourers have adapted to weapons that bend reality, manipulate time, and exist in multiple dimensions. How do they adapt to a simple piece of metal, traveling at high velocity? What countermeasure do they develop against explosives that work through basic chemical reactions? They could develop stronger armor, suggested Admiral Veltran. Yes, but that requires matter and energy. Our energy weapons can be simply negated once they understand the principles. But to stop kinetic weapons, they must physically block them. That costs resources and limits their other capabilities. The chamber buzzed with uncomfortable whispers. The idea of relying on primitive human weapons was deeply offensive to beings who had spent millions of years evolving beyond such crude methods. Even if you are correct, Zethkari said slowly, the humans have been banned from all military operations. They have no reason to help us after the way we treated them. Actually, a small voice spoke from the back of the chamber. A junior aide, a young member of the Traders Guild, stepped forward nervously. I have maintained communication with Earth for commercial purposes. The humans have been preparing. Preparing for what? Zethkari demanded. According to their Admiral Chen, they have been expanding their military capabilities since the ban was announced 6 months ago. Their shipyards are running at full capacity. They have been mass-producing weapons and training soldiers as if they expected a major conflict. Why would they do that after being excluded from our operations? Asked General Krikstal. The aide shifted uncomfortably. Admiral Chen apparently told her staff that there is always another war coming. She said advanced civilizations might forget how to fight, but humans never would. A longer silence fell over the chamber. The implications were clear but difficult to accept. While the consortium had celebrated their technological superiority and mocked human primitiveness, the humans had quietly continued preparing for battle. So they knew, whispered Dr. Senthara. Somehow they knew we would need them. The question, Zethkari said heavily, is whether they will help us after we so publicly humiliated them. Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the complex. Emergency lights flashed as communication officers rushed to their stations. Report, Zethkari commanded. The Centaurus gate has fallen. The communications officer announced, his voice hollow with shock. The entire defense fleet gone. Less than 200 ships escaped. The Devourers will reach Nexus Prime in 72 hours. The chamber erupted in panic. Delegates jumped to their feet shouting orders and demands. Some called for immediate evacuation. Others screamed about developing new superweapons. A few simply sat in stunned silence. Through the chaos, Dr. Morthel's voice carried clearly. The quantum communication array is still functional. We could contact Earth. And say what? Zethkari asked desperately. Ask the primitives we mocked to save us? Yes, Dr. Morthel replied simply. Because they might be primitive enough to succeed where we have failed. The vote was closer than anyone expected. Fear of the approaching devourers battled against pride, and the humiliation of asking for help from a species they had dismissed as inferior. But as reports continued to arrive of worlds being consumed and fleets destroyed, practical necessity overcame pride. The quantum communication to Earth was approved by a margin of just 12 votes. As the message was prepared, Zethkari wondered what Admiral Chen would say when she received their desperate plea for help. Would the humans laugh at the advanced civilizations begging for assistance? Would they demand apologies and concessions? Or would they simply prepare to do what they had always done? Fight when everyone else had given up. The transmission was sent, and the consortium waited to learn if their last hope lay in the hands of the very beings they had mocked as too primitive to be useful. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the Terran Defense Headquarters, watching the quantum communication display flicker with an incoming message from Nexus Prime. Around her, human officers worked at simple but efficient control stations, their equipment looking crude compared to the elegant alien technology she had seen in diplomatic meetings. The message was brief and desperate. Admiral Chen, this is Emergency Council Speaker Morphak of Nexus Prime. The consortium formally requests immediate military assistance from the Terran Federation. The Devourers have broken through all defenses. We need your help. The transmission crackled with interference as Devourer forces disrupted communication networks across the galaxy. Behind the words, Chen could hear the sound of alarms and panicked voices in the background. Captain Rodriguez stood beside his commander waiting for orders. The other officers in the room had stopped their work to listen. Everyone knew this moment would come eventually, though few expected it to arrive so quickly. Patch me through to the council chambers, Chen ordered calmly. Admiral, the quantum link is barely stable, the communications officer warned. We might lose connection at any moment. Do it anyway. The connection established after several tense minutes of static. The main screen showed the consortium council chambers filled with frightened delegates from dozens of species. The air seemed to shimmer with various forms of alien distress. Electromagnetic panic signals, pheromone clouds of fear, and telepathic waves of desperation. Chen recognized many faces from 6 months earlier, when these same beings had voted to exclude human forces from their military operations. Ambassador Zethkari looked exhausted, his usually proud posture slumped with defeat. High Commander Zelmoth flickered between dimensions nervously, unable to maintain stable form. This is Admiral Chen. Her voice echoed through the vast chamber, translated into hundreds of alien languages. 6 months ago, you voted to exclude human forces from consortium operations. You called our methods primitive, our weapons obsolete, our tactics barbaric. The chamber fell silent except for the distant rumble of approaching Devourer forces. Several delegates lowered their heads in shame. Others stared at Chen with desperate hope in their alien eyes. You said we fight like our ancestors from thousands of years ago, Chen continued, her voice steady and calm. You mocked our reliance on kinetic weapons and chemical explosives. You laughed at our simple military strategies. Captain Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably beside her. He had been present during that humiliating session, watching as species after species dismissed humanity as too primitive to be useful allies. However, Chen's voice softened slightly. Humans don't abandon allies in their darkest hour. Even allies who have abandoned us. The Terran Federation will provide military assistance under the following conditions. Human forces operate under human command, using human tactics and human weapons. No interference from consortium leadership. No attempts to upgrade our equipment with your advanced technology. We do this our way, or we don't do it at all. The response was immediate and unanimous. Every delegate in the chamber voted to accept Chen's terms without discussion or debate. Pride was a luxury they could no longer afford. Thank you, Admiral Chen. Zethkari's voice trembled with relief and gratitude. What do you need from us? Stay out of our way, Chen replied bluntly, and prepare to see warfare the way your ancestors might have fought it, before you became too civilized to get your hands dirty. The transmission ended, leaving the human command center in focused silence. Chen turned to address her staff, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself a small smile. Captain Rodriguez, send word to all fleet commanders. Operation Hammerfall is now active. I want every available ship at the Proxima staging area within 48 hours. Admiral, we only have 1,800 vessels combat ready, Rodriguez replied. The consortium lost over 8,000 ships at Centaurus Gate. Numbers don't win wars, Captain. People do. And we have something the consortium lost a long time ago. What's that, Admiral? The willingness to be absolutely, completely unreasonable when someone threatens our friends. Across human space, the largest military mobilization in Earth's history began. Unlike the elegant consortium fleets with their sleek designs and exotic technologies, the human armada looked brutally functional. Angular ships bristled with railguns, missile pods, and kinetic weapon arrays. No phase shift drives or quantum manipulators, just fusion engines, thick armor, and enough firepower to level continents. Admiral Chen transferred her command to the UES Indomitable, humanity's largest warship. The ship's bridge was cramped and utilitarian compared to alien command centers, filled with analog displays and manual controls that would still function even if sophisticated computer systems failed. Status report, Chen ordered, as she took her command chair. Fleet assembly is ahead of schedule, reported Commander Jackson, the ship's tactical officer. 1,700 vessels ready for combat, with more arriving hourly. Marine transports are fully loaded and standing by. Marines? Chen asked. 20,000 assault troops equipped for boarding actions, Jackson confirmed. Full combat gear, standard kinetic weapons, and enough ammunition to fight for weeks. Chen nodded approvingly. While alien species had evolved beyond the need for ground combat, humans had never forgotten the importance of soldiers who could fight in close quarters when fancy weapons failed. Intelligence update on the Devourers? She asked. Commander Sarah Kim, the ship's science officer, consulted her displays. They've consumed 51 worlds so far, converting all matter into additional ships and biomechanical soldiers. Current fleet strength estimated at over 100,000 vessels. Adaptation capabilities? Extensive. They've countered every advanced weapon system the consortium used against them. Phase shift technology, quantum disruptors, reality warping weapons, all neutralized within hours of first contact. How do they adapt so quickly? Kim pulled up holographic displays showing Devourer ship analysis. Their biomechanical nature allows rapid evolution at the cellular level, but more importantly, they seem to analyze the theoretical foundations of advanced weapons and develop specific countermeasures. What about simpler weapons? Unknown. The consortium never used kinetic weapons against them. We'll be the first to test their effectiveness. Chen studied the tactical displays showing human fleet positions. Her ships looked pitifully small compared to the Devourer swarm, but she had learned long ago that wars were not won by superior technology alone. Admiral, Captain Rodriguez approached her chair. Some of the younger officers are asking about our chances against such overwhelming odds. What should I tell them? Chen stood and walked to the main viewport, looking out at the assembled human fleet. The ships hung in space like a gathering storm, dark, angular, and radiating barely contained violence. Tell them this, Captain, she said quietly. Every species in this galaxy evolved beyond the need for warfare. They became so advanced that they forgot the most basic truth about conflict. Which is? Chen turned back to face her bridge crew. Her weathered face showed no fear, only the calm determination of someone who had spent a lifetime preparing for exactly this moment. Sometimes you don't need to be smarter than your enemy. Sometimes you don't need better technology or more elegant solutions. Sometimes you just need to be willing to walk into hell and drag the devil out by his throat. The bridge crew absorbed her words in silence. These were people who had grown up hearing stories of humanity's violent past, who had learned from childhood that their species had survived not through superior evolution, but through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. The Devourers think they've faced the best the galaxy has to offer, Chen continued. They've defeated species that can manipulate reality itself, that exist in multiple dimensions, that have evolved beyond physical limitations. They've proven they can adapt to any sophisticated technology. She paused, looking each of her officers in the eye. But they've never faced anyone dumb enough to just keep hitting them until they stop moving. They've never fought an enemy that considers impossible odds to be a personal challenge, rather than a reason to surrender. Outside the viewport, more human ships continued to arrive at the staging area. The fleet was ready for the most desperate battle in human history. A battle they would fight not with advanced technology or elegant tactics, but with the most primitive and effective weapon humanity had ever developed: the absolute refusal to quit. The council chambers on Nexus Prime had never been more crowded. Representatives from every surviving consortium world pressed together, watching the massive tactical display that showed the final confrontation about to begin. The air hummed with tension, as delegates who had once mocked human primitiveness now pinned all their hopes on those same barbaric methods. Ambassador Zethkari stood at the central podium, his forearms shaking as he addressed the assembly. "The human fleet has reached the Proxima defense line. This is our last chance. If they fail, the Devourers will consume the core worlds within days." The tactical display showed the opposing forces in stark detail. The Devourer swarm stretched across several light years. Over 100,000 biomechanical ships of various sizes, all pulsing with organic technology that had learned to counter every advanced weapon system in the galaxy. Facing them was the human fleet, 1,847 vessels that looked primitive and crude by consortium standards. No sleek curves or elegant designs, just angular metal boxes bristling with simple weapons. Compared to the enemy swarm, they seemed impossibly outnumbered. "The humans are moving into attack position," reported General Krikstal, his insect voice clicking with nervous energy. "Their formation is unusual." The human ships had arranged themselves in a simple wall formation, the largest vessels in front with smaller ships behind them. There was no sophisticated maneuvering, no clever tactical positioning, just a straight line facing the enemy. "They're not even trying to use superior positioning," commented High Commander Zelmoth, his form flickering between dimensions with anxiety. "Any first-year tactical student would know better than to meet a larger force head-on." Dr. Santhara's crystal body pulsed with worry. "Perhaps they have some advanced strategy we cannot understand." On the bridge of the UES Indomitable, Admiral Chen watched the Devourer fleet approaching through the viewports. The enemy ships were beautiful in a terrifying way. Organic curves mixed with metallic structures, constantly shifting and adapting as they moved through space. "Range to enemy fleet?" she asked calmly. 2 million kilometers in closing," reported Commander Jackson. "They'll be in optimal firing range in 30 minutes. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," she announced over the fleet communication system. "Remember the plan. No fancy tactics, no clever strategies. When we get in range, we shoot everything we have at them until they stop moving. If they adapt to our weapons, we shoot them with bigger weapons. If they develop stronger armor, we shoot them more times." "Admiral," Captain Rodriguez said quietly, "the consortium forces are expecting some kind of brilliant human strategy. What if our simple approach doesn't work?" Chen looked at him with a slight smile. "Captain, there's something about human nature that our alien friends never understood. When we can't go around something and we can't go over it, we go through it. And if we can't go through it, we hit it until we can." The first engagement began at maximum range. The Devourers opened fire with biomechanical weapons that had proven devastatingly effective against consortium forces. Energy beams that phased through normal matter, organic missiles that could track targets across dimensions, and reality distortion fields that made conventional defense useless. The human response was simple and brutal. Every ship opened fire simultaneously with kinetic weapons. Railguns launching metal slugs at incredible velocity, mass drivers hurling chunks of dense alloy, and missile systems firing simple explosive warheads. In the council chambers, delegates watched in confusion as thousands of metal projectiles streaked toward the Devourer fleet. These were the same primitive weapons they had mocked just months earlier. "This cannot possibly work," muttered Counselor Vextra. "Simple kinetic weapons against an enemy that has adapted to reality warping technology." The first impacts surprised everyone. Devourer bioships, which had easily deflected quantum disruptors and phase shift attacks, were punched full of holes by simple metal projectiles. Their organic armor, evolved to counter energy weapons and exotic attacks, provided little protection against high-velocity mass. They're actually damaging them," Dr. Santhara whispered in amazement. But the Devourers were nothing if not adaptive. Within minutes, their ships began developing thicker armor plating and kinetic barriers. The same projectiles that had been devastating initially now caused less damage with each impact. "They're adapting," Commander Jackson reported to Admiral Chen. "Enemy armor thickness has increased by 40% in the last 10 minutes. Then we use bigger bullets," Chen replied calmly. "All ships switched to heavy penetrator rounds." The human fleet began firing larger projectiles, massive tungsten, rods launched at even higher velocities. The thicker Devourer armor cracked and shattered under the increased impact force. Again, the enemy adapted, developing layered armor systems and energy absorption fields. Again, the humans responded by shooting them with even more powerful weapons. "This is incredible," breathed Ambassador Zethkari as he watched the battle unfold. "The Devourers keep adapting to human weapons, but the humans just shoot them harder." "It's not elegant," admitted General Krickstall, "but it seems to be working." The turning point came when the human fleet closed to boarding range. While consortium forces had always fought at long distance using sophisticated weapons, humans did something no civilized species had attempted in millennia. They rammed their ships directly into enemy vessels and sent soldiers inside to fight, hand to hand. The footage that filled the council chambers was unlike anything the delegates had ever seen. Human marines in powered armor cut through Devourer bioships with chainsaws, flamethrowers, and simple steel blades. Where other species had tried to outthink the adaptive enemy, humans simply outstubborned them. They're fighting. Inside the enemy ships, Dr. Synthara said in amazement. With primitive weapons, against biomechanical organisms designed to adapt to any threat. The Devourer adaptation systems, evolved to counter sophisticated technology and complex tactics, proved helpless against humans with shotguns and unlimited ammunition. Hive minds that could analyze and counter quantum mechanics could not find an elegant solution to a marine with an assault rifle who simply refused to stop shooting. "Why is this working?" demanded High Commander Zelmoth. Dr. Morthel, the young scientist who had first suggested contacting humans, stood to answer. "Because adaptation requires analysis and understanding. The Devourers can analyze the principles behind our advanced weapons and develop countermeasures. But what principles do they analyze when the attack is simply throw metal object at enemy very hard? But surely they can develop armor thick enough to stop kinetic weapons," argued Admiral Veltran. "Yes, but that requires matter and energy," Dr. Morthel explained. "Energy weapons can be simply negated once you understand the theory. But stopping kinetic weapons requires physical barriers that consume resources and limit mobility. The humans are forcing them to make trade-offs instead of simply adapting." The battle raged for 18 hours. Each time the Devourers developed a new defense, the humans found a simpler way to overwhelm it. Thicker armor was defeated by bigger bullets. Energy shields were overloaded by volume of fire. Biomechanical repair systems were overwhelmed by soldiers who just kept shooting until nothing moved. The final exchange occurred when Admiral Chen's flagship rammed directly into the largest Devourer vessel, a biomechanical monstrosity the size of a small moon. Instead of elegant boarding pods or sophisticated infiltration systems, human marines simply cut holes in the hull with plasma torches and poured inside. "Admiral Chen," came a transmission from the boarding team leader. "We've reached what appears to be the central hive node. It's trying to analyze our weapons and adapt, but all we're doing is shooting it with bullets. It doesn't seem to know how to counter that." "Then keep shooting," Chen replied calmly. "When you run out of bullets, use grenades. When you run out of grenades, use knives. When you run out of knives, use your fists." The council chambers fell, absolutely silent as they watched the footage. Human soldiers, looking crude and primitive in their basic armor, systematically destroyed the most sophisticated biomechanical technology in the galaxy, using weapons that any civilization would have considered obsolete millions of years ago. "It's working," whispered Ambassador Zethkari. "They're actually winning." The battle ended not with some technological breakthrough or brilliant tactical maneuver, but with the complete destruction of the Devourer fleet through the simple application of overwhelming, primitive, unstoppable human violence. When the last enemy ship went dark, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of her battered flagship and transmitted to the council chambers. "Nexus Prime, this is Admiral Chen. The Devourer fleet has been eliminated. Your space lanes are clear." The silence in the council chambers stretched for several minutes. Finally, Ambassador Zethkari found his voice. "Admiral, how did you succeed where our most advanced civilizations failed?" Chen's image appeared on the main screen, her uniform torn and her face streaked with smoke from the battle. Behind her, the bridge showed the controlled chaos of humans who had just fought the galaxy's most dangerous enemy and won.